open the pod bay doors.
Greetings and welcome to another exciting episode of the Cinematic Traveler Podcast. I am your intrepid movie exploring host, Chris, and on this episode, I'm going to be bringing you my review for the film A Complete Unknown, directed by James Mangold and starring Hollywood's favorite young man at the moment. That would be Timothee Chalamet as music icon Bob Dylan. And I wonder how many of Timothee Chalamet's fans actually knew who Bob Dylan was before they even walked into this movie theater. Well, unfortunately, I am old enough to know who Bob Dylan was, but I am still young at heart and can still give you a great review for this movie. And I'm excited to talk about it. Before I do, if you could just do me one favor, whatever you're listening to the show on, somewhere on that screen, there is a follow button. If you could just click that follow button, I would greatly appreciate it. It does help me in the long run, but it also helps you. That way you won't miss another episode of my amazing reviews and this sexy, sexy voice. Also, if you'd like, you can leave me a rating and a review. That also helps the show not only get out there to more people, but for me to make a better show for you, if that's even possible. And you can also follow me on my social media. I would recommend Instagram at Cinematic Traveler Pod. I'm on that more than anything. But I also have a Twitter account at CMT Pod. And I have whatever the other version is, Blue Sky. That one is at Cinematic Traveler Pod something. Or you can get in touch with me through my email, thecinematictravelerpod@gmail.com. I think I got through all of those. I try to do it as fast as I can so we could dive into these episodes. I hope you're doing well out there, my beloved listener. Here we are in the first few days of 2025. Hopefully you are still sticking to those resolutions. If you're not, it's no big deal. It is said that the road to hell is paved by broken New Year's resolutions. Isn't that the saying? I don't know. I'm not judging you for it. I've probably already broken at least one or two in the past day and a half. But we've got all year, so you can always restart those anytime you want. But there is one resolution that you don't have to make, and that is to be an awesome audience member. And pretty damn good looking, I might add. So now that I have buttered you up, let's go ahead and dive into my review. As always, I do have to over-explain a few things. I am going to be giving you a spoiler-free plot synopsis and movie review. But in my plot synopsis, I am going to hide two movie quotes from movies that are either parallel to this or share some DNA. And if you can identify those movie quotes, just let me know through those various means that I just gave you, and I will give you a point for each one that you get right. At the end of the month, I add up all the points, and whoever wins gets to pick a movie for me to review the next month. Or you can just play for fun and get a couple points. Know that you have conquered the movie quote contest. I do have a winner for last month who has already put in their request for the movie for me to review, which is a good one, and I can't wait to get to that one. I'm not going to keep it secret until the last minute, but do participate. It's a fun little game. I know it's not cool, but it's okay. You can be uncool with Chris. It's the best time of the week, and that is to be uncool with Chris. So let's go ahead and dive into A Complete Unknown, as I mentioned, directed by James Mangold. No stranger to the musical biopic because he directed Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix. He also did another biopic or historical pick, which was one of my favorites, Ford versus Ferrari. That was a great movie with Christian Bale and Matt Damon. He also did one of the best superhero movies ever, and that being Logan. Oh, yeah, and he did Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Oh, how can someone with such a good directing track record direct that movie? Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're going to stay positive. We're going to be positive in 2025. So with A Complete Unknown, we enter into the movie in 1961 and we meet young Bobby Dylan, of course played by Timothee Chalamet, who has traveled from his home state of Minnesota all the way to the big city of New York to meet his hero Woody Guthrie, played by Scoot McNairy, who is in the hospital. He's had some kind of, I don't know what it was. I should have researched that, but basically he's almost invalid. Well, Bobby, he travels in there with a guitar, and Woody demands that he plays a song. So Bobby plays a song for him and another folk singer, Pete Seeger, played by Edward Norton. Now they see a spark in the young Bobby Dylan, and Pete takes him under his wing, and quickly Bob Dylan begins to take over the world of folk music. As Bob's star begins to rise, he has two on-again, off-again relationships, one with Sylvie, played by Elle Fanning, and the other with fellow famous folk singer Joan Baez, played by Monica Barbaro. These ladies, they try to tame Bob, but the quest to change music is too strong in old Bobby, and he starts to clash with Pete and the old guard of folk music. With some advice from friend Johnny Cash, played by Boyd Holbrook, Bob decides to buck the system and add electric guitar to his music, which is a big no-no to folk singers. And this causes Bob to lash out at Pete and say something to the effect of, "Don't you dare try to stifle me. Whose band is this anyway, you cocksucker? I'll punch you in the mouth." That's a funny one. Sorry, if you didn't know, that might be one of the quotes. I don't know if that's directly from this movie, hint, hint. At any rate, well, Bob heads to the Newport Folk Festival in 1965 with his new electric sound and plays for the crowd. But this doesn't go over well because, as we all know, it's America. They're Puritans in public, perverts in private. Hint, hint. So I know what you're asking. Will this music crowd turn on Bob Dylan? Or will the times start a-changing and they'll embrace this new sound? Well, I'm not going to spoil any of those things, but this is a biopic of Bob Dylan, something that started in 1961 and now we're at 2025. So maybe, possibly you can guess what happens, but I'm not going to ruin it for you. I promise I will not ruin it for you. But I will give you the best review of a complete unknown in all the podcast universe, nay, in all of the universe. So now, if you are new to the podcast, or if you haven't listened in a little while, I do break my reviews down into 3 segments: the good, the bad, and the nitpicky. The good is the stuff that works for me in the movie. The bad is the stuff, obviously, that doesn't. And the nitpicky, these are things that are neither good nor bad, sometimes just Hollywoodisms, or sometimes things I just pick up on screen that make my little warped brain laugh. And as I am trying to do with this podcast, I'd like to make you laugh, because there are 2 things I love to do on this planet, and one of those is to make people laugh, and the other is, unfortunately, well, anyway, let's go ahead and move into my review. So with the good of A Complete Unknown, I am going to start where all of the youngsters in this country, especially the young ladies, they want to know, how good is Timothee Chalamet as Bob Dylan? Well, I'm here to tell you, youngsters out there, that he does a fine job as Bob Dylan. In fact, there are times in this movie that I actually thought he was Bob Dylan. I thought they used some kind of CGI deep fake kind of stuff, but my God, he would have looks, especially as he got a little further into the 60s and he started wearing the shades and had his hair a little longer, and he would just cut his eyes certain ways. I was like, God damn, he looks just like Bob Dylan. And he kind of gets that muttering speech pattern that Bob is known for. I will say, I don't want to put this isn't really even a negative or anything, but there are moments in this movie you're like, what the hell did he just say? And part of me wanted to take off some points for that, but then I was like, well, that's kind of what Bob Dylan sounds like. So yeah, he's pretty much got it right. Timothy also does all of the singing. I think all of the people in the movie do all their own singing, which again, it was impressive. He sounded, I know I'm going to get in trouble for this one, he sounded like Bob Dylan, only a better version of Bob Dylan. I guess I should elaborate a little bit. I'm not a big Bob Dylan fan. I will acknowledge his talent as a songwriter. I think he is obviously, I think he won a Nobel Prize for poetry or his songs or something. At any rate, he is well known for the songs that he has written and that have been covered by other people, or he's written for other people that have gone on to be massive hits. So I will never say anything derogatory about the man for that. However, I just don't care for his voice. That nasally way he sings a song, it just doesn't really work for me. It's kind of, I'd like a grilled cheese, if you please. Maybe a Pepsi. I don't really like the way his voice sounds. But again, I will acknowledge the talent the man had and the influence he had on music, especially at that time with the counterculture and all that stuff in the 60s. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to say it. Timothee Chalamet, he's excellent in this movie. Another surprise for me, which is a little bit weird to say because he is a good actor when he wants to be, I guess. Edward Norton as Pete Seeger. I thought he was quietly maybe the undersung hero of this movie. As I mentioned, he sort of plays the old guard folk singer who takes Bob under his wing, and he's very proud of him and what he's achieved. But once Bob starts kind of pushing back and bringing the electric into the folk music, that's where there's a little bit of a clash. But Pete is such a nice guy, it's very difficult for him to kind of, I don't want to say stand up to Bob because he does that, but he's not very confrontational in it. He still admires what Bob does. He doesn't want folk music to go in that direction. And I think Norton plays that very well. It's very understated. You can see the kindness in him, especially early on when he is sort of nurturing that career, but it follows all the way through the movie, and just how much it does sting at the end when Bob sort of takes that turn. Although, like I said, he could still see the greatness in him. So, yeah, I think it was a nice little performance by Edward. I haven't seen him do anything really great in a while, so he really stepped up his game there. I don't want to say surprised because, like I said, I've seen him do such amazing performances in his career, but I haven't seen one in a while, and he really knocked it out of the park here. Also, it's a bit part, but Boyd Holbrook, who I didn't even recognize, to be honest with you, as Johnny Cash, it's a fun performance. You could tell he's just loving being Johnny Cash and kind of steering into the Man in Black and all that stuff. So I liked his performance as well. I will say Ellie Fanning, is that right? Or is it Ellie Fanning or Elle Fanning? Either way, her and Monica Barbaro, I think they do a good job as Sylvie and Joan Baez. I will have some criticisms that don't really fall at their feet. I think they are good at what they're doing in the movie, but again, we'll get to some things with their characters that kind of misfired for me. As far as the look of the movie, again, I told you James Mangold, he's done, Walk the Line and Ford versus Ferrari. So he kind of has that ability to bring you into these eras, and he does the same thing here. I mean, this is very immersive. Nothing on the screen doesn't feel 1960s all the way through to the end. You really get, again, that counterculture environment that Bob is involved in New York City and how that changes him and makes him want to grow as a musician and kind of push the boundaries on what he's doing as well as folk music. And the other thing that I liked about this movie was that it kind of reminds me of Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's not really a full-on, this is Bob Dylan's life and here's every moment of it. It's more like it's the beginning of his musical career that leads to a definite point, that 1965 folk music festival. So it does feel like the movie mostly is leading to something instead of kind of just like, oh, here's everything laid out from start to finish. And I like that because you have sort of that definitive ending point in the movie that tells the story it wants to tell. And I think, there are some biopics that, you want to learn everything about them. But this, I think, just that definitive moment, not only in Bob Dylan's life, but in musical history, it's hard to have something in a movie after that would live up to that event. So I like that it kind of went that way and didn't really meander too much. Speaking of that, let's go ahead and move into the bad of the movie. While I did point out that it was nice to have that kind of event that this movie is leading into, it does feel like it kind of meanders a little here and there, especially when it comes to Bob and his life. You don't really learn that much about him. But really, the only thing I learned about him was that he had a relationship with Johnny Cash. I did not know the two. They were pen pals for the longest time. And Bob really looked up to Johnny Cash. But you don't really learn what his driving force is other than that he just wants to be a musician. And that from the start of the movie. But there's things where it's like, okay, why does he want to make this music electric, or what is the driving force of him wanting to change folk music instead of maybe abandoning it altogether? I guess it touches on it a little bit that he wants more young people to get involved with it. But at the same point, you never really learn what motivated him to follow all these things. It's just kind of like he is really good at it, and that's just sort of the direction he went. So, yeah, I didn't really feel like I learned a lot about him. I did talk about his relationship with Sylvie and Joan Baez. And as much as the performances were good, I think this is where the movie really struggles because these characters are a tad bit underdeveloped. They're all kind of one note. And it just feels weird in the relationship. It's like he kind of, like I said, it was off again, on again, off again, on again. But you never really understand why they want to latch onto him other than he's this rising star. It never felt like there was this passion or there was this love or there were these great moments between these two. Or I should say these three. I don't know how you say it. Between each woman and Bob, to where you're like, oh, I get why she keeps coming back, or I get why it's so difficult for her to walk away. So I think there needed to be a little more there with those relationships, since it was kind of the backbone of the movie. Because really, that's what you bounce between him and his rising career and what he wants to change in music and his relationships with these women. And my last real negative for the movie, and I think this kind of leans into what I just said with the underdeveloped characters there. You do have a lot of characters in this movie that are just kind of there, and you don't really get explained a lot. There were some people that would show up at points in movies where I would forget who they were, or some new character would show up and I had no idea what their part in Bob's life is or why I should be paying attention to them. And then they would just kind of disappear for a while and then circle back. The folk music community outside of Pete, you don't really learn a lot about these other characters. There's this one character that keeps getting really angry at Bob, and I don't know who he was in the history of music to have this clash with Bob. It was like I said, it just wasn't very developed, and I wish they would have added either a little more to that or just maybe strip down some of these characters and get them out of the movie and maybe streamline it a little more. But, I mean, that's a very small negative for this movie. So let's go ahead and move into the nitpicky. I know I'm kind of moving pretty quick through this. I will tell you why here in a little bit. But again, the nitpicky, these are things that are neither good nor bad. Just things in these movies that always seem to make me laugh. The first one is very early on when Pete does meet Bob. Bob finds his way into this hospital and plays a song that Pete likes. And next thing you know, Pete's bringing him back to his house out in the middle of nowhere with his wife and his kids. And I'm like, it must have been a different time because, my God, what if he'd have just been one of Charles Manson's brothers or cousins or something and just decided to wipe out the whole family? Sure, he could sing a good song, but you don't know if he's a serial killer. Come on, Pete. I know you're a nice guy, but you have to draw some lines somewhere, buddy. All right, let's see. My next nitpick, there are a lot of musical numbers, obviously, in the movie. And you see Bob working from like these little clubs all the way up to these big shows and these musical festivals and whatnot. But there was one where he comes out and he's like, I know you want to hear something old. That's my bad Bob Dylan. But I'm going to play something new. And I just couldn't help but think, is there nothing worse at a concert when the artist is like, I'm going to do my new stuff now. Don't you feel like, oh, shit, I didn't come here to hear the new stuff. I want to hear the old stuff. And it's even worse when they open the concert with a new song because you're completely lost. You got no energy. You want to hear something old that you're really into. You don't want to hear the new stuff. You play that kind of in the middle when I can go to the bathroom. And my last nitpick for this movie, and this might be the most realistic part of this whole movie. While I mentioned that you don't really get a deep meaning as to the relationship that Bob has with Sylvie or Joan, I will say there's a little something in here that makes me think maybe I know why they keep coming back. Because Bob, he's a bit of an asshole. Obviously, he's a musician and he has his guitar and he plays his lovely songs and he rides a motorcycle. So that really is the trifecta of things to get a girl. So for all of you young men out there, don't believe those movies where the guy's got this undying crush and he's going to woo her and win her over. No. This movie tells you exactly what you need. You need to be an asshole, some kind of musician, And probably if you ride a motorcycle, you're going to get some kind of girl. So yeah, kudos to you, James Mangold, for showing everyone the combination to successfully getting girls. See, you don't have to watch all of those YouTube videos about alpha males now. Just go see A Complete Unknown. So as for my final verdict for this film, and because this was probably a quick review, I will say this is a very, very safe movie. I think that if you choose to go watch this movie, you are not going to be disappointed. I don't want to be so bold as to say you must go see it on the big screen. It's just one of those where if you see the preview and you're like, oh, I like Timothee Chalamet, or I'm interested in Bob Dylan, then you're going to enjoy this movie. It's a safe biopic. It's not breaking the mold. It's not trying new and different directions to go, showing an artist's life. Instead, it's a little paint by numbers, and you know where the story's going, and you just kind of sit back and enjoy the performances of the film. I would probably say wait for it to come out on streaming, but I kind of can tiptoe into the go see it on the big screen, again, for the performances. I think Timothee Chalamet, he proves again why he is the it star in Hollywood right now, because he keeps delivering in these movies, and I'm curious to see where he goes next in his career. And again, Edward Norton surprises me with one of his good Edward Norton performances that really helps lend something to this movie. So I would mostly say wait for it to come on streaming. However, again, if you like Timothee Chalamet, then I would probably go watch it just because his performance is that damn good. So I know that's a little bit wishy-washy there, isn't it? I should just take a stand. All right, you know what? I will. I'll take a stand. Go watch it on the big screen. Why not? I mean, this is a well-crafted, well-acted movie, and we should support these types of movies. And again, I don't think you'll be disappointed. The music is good, obviously, and you know, you got fine performances everywhere. Hell the hell with it. Go watch it in the movie theater. What else are you going to do? You could spare a couple hours. You'll be fine. And for you young people, you'll learn that there's actually music before whenever you were born. They've been doing this for a very long time, and they've been rebellious for a very long time. So go enjoy. Have a good time. If you get bored, you can make out in the back of the theater. Of course, the movie theater I was in, I felt young in that movie theater. There was not a lot of making out in that movie theater. So that wraps up my review for A Complete Unknown. If you're still listening, then I must have done something right. And if I did, again, if you could follow the show, give a rating, a review, I'd greatly appreciate it. Why not participate in the movie quote contest? Just find me at Cinematic Traveler Pod on Instagram, or you can email me, thecinematictravelerpod@gmail.com. Come on, it's fun. Everybody's doing it. Don't be a nerd. Or be a nerd. I don't know. Which way do you go with that one? At any rate, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to my show. I greatly appreciate you as an audience member. I tell everyone I know I've got the smartest and sexiest audience in all the podcast universe, and you never fail to live up to those high standards. And as you are traveling around on this blue and green ball bouncing through the cosmos, I need you to do one thing for me. Go out there and do that video that you do so well. Punch it.